New polling shows Americans are growing increasingly concerned about the war in Iran and its impact on the economy. The latest CBS News YouGov poll shows 36% of Americans approve of President Trump's handling of the conflict. That's down 2 points from last month. Trump's overall approval now sits at 39%, the lowest of his second term so far. The president is also underwater on immigration by 12 points, the economy by 30 points, and inflation by 38 points, a new low. According to CBS News, that inflation number includes a slight drop among Republicans specifically. Rufus Gifford, let's talk about this. Obviously, there's a lot that still needs to happen in the war in Iran, a lot of moving parts that are being dealt with by this administration. But it seems Americans overall are a little concerned about what's happening.
Well, and rightly so, Mika. I mean, I think you could take every one of those issues separately, but I think with Iran in particular, President Trump had an opportunity to make his case for why the United States needs to be spending billions and billions of dollars in Iran. He has never made that case. He has never effectively made it. And I think that is why his numbers are so low on Iran. And I think it's quite clear. I mean, we look at this every single day, and I'm not a Middle East expert by any stretch of the imagination. But one thing I do know is that some of the main leverage that Iran holds is their control of the Strait of Hormuz. And it just seems that we were caught by surprise. The kind of control that they take over this space, and it is dumbfounding to me how poorly they have made this case over and over again to the American people. So it should be no surprise that his polling numbers are what they are
over time.
Yeah. The reasons have changed. The first reason given by Marco Rubio was Israel. Israel was going to attack, so we needed to attack also, which I'd never heard anything like that before. It's changed a good bit, and Marco Rubio has actually given some of the most cogent reasons for why the attack went forward, and yet it's all muddled because there's not a clear, coherent message. So, John Lemire, though, let's talk about right now the challenges facing the Trump administration. The straits are closed. Iran still has a viable nuclear program. So we had negotiations going underway. Those two things have to be straightened out. And there are people that are negotiating right now with the Iranians who left Islamabad feeling confident that they were going to continue to be able to move forward and have positive talks moving forward. But let's break this down really quickly. One, yes, militarily, we've hit most of the targets. We've degraded Iran's military war-making machine. I think most people on the military side, if you looked at the targets beforehand and see where they are now, a lot of those targets have been hit. Politically, though, we talk generally about how geopolitically we've failed. But let's break this down. There are two things, actually. Whatever the deal that is put forward has to take care of Iran's nuclear program, which the president said a year ago was completely destroyed and obliterated. It's not, because we then heard that they were only 2 weeks away from having nukes. He can't end the war without a deal on Iran's nuclear program that people in America are going to be supportive of. And number two, the straits, they have to be open. So those are the two political items that the president knows he has to check off the list before those troops come home. But of course, the longer they stay there, the longer the straits are closed down, the higher gas prices go. So there's a real tug of war here between the president's domestic political interests and what he wants to achieve as his lasting legacy in Iran.
There's no question there. And you're right. I've heard the same from some officials involved with the talks, that there's, I wouldn't say optimism per se, but at least a sense like, look, this could continue. This isn't necessarily the end right now. We know President Trump is weighing, though, ending the ceasefire, launching attacks again. We don't know, though, that he will. That's just something that's been put before him. But there's no doubt there's political pain at home. Right now, with the Strait of Hormuz closed, this is a loss for this administration. We have to see if they can reverse that, and we can feel that loss because of rising prices. And President Trump on Fox News yesterday weighed in on the status of gas prices ahead of the upcoming midterm elections.
So do you believe the price of oil and gas will be lower before the midterm elections?
I hope so. I mean, I think so. It could be. It could be or the same or maybe a little bit higher, but it should be around the same. I think this won't be that much longer. They're wiped out, man. They're wiped out.
So the chair of the Democratic National Committee, Ken Martin, said in a statement that if the president's midterm pitch to Americans is higher gas prices by Election Day, Republicans are in big, big trouble. And, Joe, hard to find fault with that. It is remarkable how publicly the president remains so blasé about this, but internally in the White House political operation, there's real panic. In the campaigns of Republicans, the House and Senate running this fall, there's real panic because even if the strait reopens, even if this war does wind down, let's say, in a few weeks, it's going to take a while for prices to come back. Voters likely won't forget.
Well, the problem for the president is he's faced right now with two very bad choices. He can cut and run, which, of course, won't help because Iran will control the straits, or he can stick it out, which I think is really the only choice he has. If you talk to allies in the region, the Gulf allies in the region, they will say you can't leave us here with an angry Iran that controls the straits. That'll be devastating for the UAE, for the Saudis. And at the same time, if he sees this through to make sure the straits are reopened, to make sure that Iran's nuclear program is at least negotiated away or put in a position where it's not an ongoing danger to the United States and the region, well, that's going to mean gas prices are going to be higher. So, Rufus, two very bad choices, but it seems to me any president in this position, you never know what Donald Trump's going to do, but any president in this position would know they can't cut and run and leave the straits in the hands of the Iranians. So gas prices may be high through the fall, may be high until a deal is struck with the Iranians. That's why the negotiations matter far more than bombing Karg Island or bombing other things in Iran, because they've got to get a diplomatic deal.
That's right, Joe. I completely agree. We have no choice but to continue to negotiate. But where I think this falls so flat, the Trump administration policy falls so flat, is that while the highest profile negotiations between the United States and Iran in 47 years were occurring, where is Donald Trump? Donald Trump is in Miami at a UFC fight with his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. And I think it's going to be impossible. Jonathan, you mentioned the White House panicking about this. It is very, very difficult to make the case politically that you have your eye on the ball when you're watching cage fights on a Saturday night when your vice president is sitting and negotiating with the Pakistanis and the Iranians. It's quite extraordinary, and certainly not something that any other administration would have even begun to get away with.
So back to the other major news on the world stage, Orban's loss. Madam Prime Minister, I'm curious what this means to Europe and the world as it pertains to Ukraine. Any prognostication on that, or is it too early?
Well, actually, before we go to that, can I also comment on the Strait of Hormuz and the situation in Iran, because it's clearly affecting the rest of the world with the very high gas prices that you mentioned, but also, I mean, fertilizers going through the Strait of Hormuz that are not reaching the countries that could be in famine next year. So we are really supporting the diplomatic solution, and we are also offering, our help in terms of finding this diplomatic solution, because we have had negotiations with Iran before, and not only the nuclear file that needs to be addressed, but also their ballistic missile program, their support for the proxies in the region. And it's clear that, we can't leave this crisis with, more angry Iran. There needs to be a settlement that is guaranteeing the stability of the region that is really necessary for it. Now, to your question on the situation in Ukraine, the question, of course, is Hungary has been blocking our decisions regarding Ukraine. The question is whether the new government will take a different stance. Right now, I mean, in the election process, we saw that this party is of a different position when it comes to Ukraine. So let's see if we can also settle a few of the decisions that were hanging so far.
High Representative of the European Union and Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, thank you so much for coming on the show this morning. And former U.S. Ambassador to Denmark, Rufus Gifford, thank you as well. And coming up on Morning Joe, Democrats